board as of now. And then we will host this on our website so you can refer to it if you have any other questions. Great. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm going to start a little bit with a percent for art. Oh, go ahead, Abby. Were you going to say something?
I just want to hop in and say I see some folks joining us on the Instagram, and if any of you would rather join us on the webinar, the link in our bio will take you to the webinar and you can hop in on WebEx if you prefer. Also totally fine to watch it here.
Perfect. Thanks, Abby. Little context, this is a regional call, which Abby will describe a little bit later, but just for a little bit context about who we are part of a local government agency. That is the context we're situated in, and part of the Salt Lake City Arts Council. The public art program is one of our programs that works really closely with a lot of other city departments. And the funding for this call is through our Percent for Art program and our Percent for Art ordinance. And that means that every year there are new capital improvement projects, or CIP projects, that get approved that are meant for, again, like new construction projects. And from those approved projects, we get 1% off the top to dedicate to the integration of public art into these projects. And so this project was approved with CIP funds for our FY19, FY20 Percent for Art funds. And so we're excited to be finally launching this project and ready to get going on it. So Abby is going to tell you all about this project, give you a little bit of background and info, and we'll just kind of be working through our RFQ, which is also posted online on our website, saltlakearts.org. Oh, excuse me, that's the Arts Council's website. We are public art program. We are saltlakepublicart.org, excuse me. You can join us there and follow along on the RFQ. Abby, do you want to give some information with our project background?
Absolutely. So this is the Jordan River Boat Ramps Public Art Opportunity. And it's a public art opportunity that can go at 4 different boat ramps that are being built along the Jordan River for the stretch of the Jordan River that is in Salt Lake City proper. A little bit of context on the Jordan River itself. For anyone who lives in the Salt Lake Valley, I think we know that it's a super important both ecological and recreational feature of our valley. It's the desert out here, and so this is a super key waterway going from Utah Lake to the Great Salt Lake. And I think as far as the Jordan River being managed, it has a lot of different folks who are working on it. So Salt Lake County, through which much of the Jordan River flows, is working on a broader river trail project, which means that the river can be used by paddlers, canoeists, kayakers throughout the county. And these 4 boat ramps that are part of this call are some of the first boat ramps to be built in that broader county-wide project. So it's a little bit of context on the boat ramps. And then as far as the city's engagement with this project, it is a project of the Department of Parks and Public Lands. So they're the ones who are building the boat ramps themselves. And we are working closely with them throughout this public art project. So finalists can expect to be talking to our partners in Parks and Public Lands to learn a little bit more about the boat ramp project perspective. At the end of our RFQ, our additional resources are also some Parks and Public Lands resources about the boat ramp project itself, which is some good context on the project to help folks kind of get aware of what's going on with this project. But the basics of the project are that there are 3 brand new boat ramps being built in Salt Lake City and 1 boat ramp that already exists but is being improved. So those are the 4 boat ramps that will host public art. Because it's 4 distinct sites, but they're all linked by the river, there's a kind of unique opportunity to have pieces that can stand alone in their own right, but also relate to one another in a wayfinding or connected manner. I think that because this is a project of the Parks Department, there's a lot of emphasis that will naturally flow to the recreational uses of the river, which are extensive. Not only can it be increasingly used by paddlers and kayakers with these boat ramps, but there's a Jordan River Parkway Trail, which is a bankside trail that's used a lot by cyclists and pedestrians. But these boat ramps will also exist in neighborhoods, and I think they will exist as features of the communities that they're within. And the Jordan River is significant to the valley beyond just its recreation uses. And so we're hoping that kind of the whole scope of importance of the Jordan River can be thought at least background while an artist is considering responding to this opportunity. As far as the eligibility for this call for artists, this is a regional call, which is very unique for us. We do a lot of calls that are restricted to Utah artists only. And so it's very exciting for us to have this sort of broader regional opportunity. When we say a Western region call, we mean only the following states: Utah, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, Nevada, and Wyoming. And artists need to reside in one of those states, not just have a connection to one of those states to be eligible to apply. We absolutely welcome artist-led teams to apply for this call, but all team members need to reside in one of those states, or collectively the whole team needs to reside in the Western region to be eligible for this call. And then I would note that because this regional call is coinciding with COVID, everything will be happening remotely. So that means that there won't be a lot of differentiation in experience, whether you are a finalist selected who's living in Montana, you can engage with this opportunity remotely, at least in its initial stages. And that's true whether you live right in the Salt Lake Valley. Anything, Kat, you want to add there on project background or eligibility?
No, I think you did such a great job, Abby. We can talk a little bit more about the specific boat ramp locations if you want to do that, if you want to share some pictures, or we could always kind of save that to the end as well. What would you prefer?
If you don't mind saving it to the end, I think that would work a little bit better as I'm like live on Instagram and filming my own computer and this whole fun technical side of things.
Awesome. You got it. Stay tuned for a few more specifics on the 4 individual boat ramps themselves. But just a note too, if you're only able to join us for a portion of this webinar, you will be able to find more specific information on our website about each site as well. So the next kind of section of the RFQ talks about the artwork goals for this call for artists. Often the art design board, which I should mention as well, is the 7-member advisory board that are volunteer and appointed by the mayor. And the board is the entity that reviews all of the applications as well as recommends the finalists and the selected commission. After the board recommends these artists, after the board recommends the artists to the mayor has final approval. And I just am seeing a question here. So let me see if I am able to make that happen. We're gonna work on this. Thanks everyone for your patience as we sort out the questions.
I can see that question. I'm happy to handle this one.
Oh, here we go. There we go. Go ahead, Abby. Yeah, I finally see it.
No, I'm glad you're asking for clarification on this because where the artists reside is an important part of eligibility. The question is, just to be clear, all artists need to reside in one of the states you mentioned, not just one of the artists. And yes, that is the case. The whole team needs to be comprised of artists who reside in the Western region. So I don't know if you'll have to cut a team member and find a replacement, or maybe someone needs to move to the West, but everyone needs to reside in the states that are eligible for this call.
Cool. Thank you so much, Abby. Okay, back to artwork goals. So the art design board, when they're reviewing your application, and if you were to be a finalist and they were reviewing your proposal, will look at the following artwork goals that we have developed with the Parks Department and as an internal staff as well. And I will say that we often review applications and proposals using either some of these artwork goals or all of the artwork goals. And they are, for this project, that the artwork can be engaged with as both individual installations and as a collective whole. So because the 4 sites are spread over a few miles, that they have some sort of collective identity, but they also are engaging when you approach just one installation, obviously because you'll only be able to interact with one at a time. So they're engaging both as a whole and individually. that the artwork reflects input gathered through a meaningful community engagement process. We'll talk a little bit about that later of what we mean by a meaningful community engagement process. We will ask that you describe that in your letter of interest, as well if you were to be a finalist in your proposal. The next artwork goal is that it raises awareness of the river's educational, ecological, and cultural importance to the community. This is an artwork goal specifically created with our Parks Department, who have done a lot of work over the years to raise the educational and ecological and cultural importance of the river, which we'll also get a little bit into in just a minute about site specificity. This one is very similar to the first artwork goal, but again, that the artwork visually links the boat ramps along the Jordan River Trail, functioning as a wayfinding element and marking each ramp. So again, part of Parks's goal with the boat ramps is to signify that there are boat ramps, and so the access points are more visible to the community, and they can clearly mark that this is an entrance to use the river as a recreational amenity. The next artwork goal is that the artwork be of the highest quality creatively and technically, and exemplify strong imaginative design and storytelling, and that it contributes to community and connection. We also ask that your artwork considers and incorporates sustainable concepts and materials. And then as a general rule, it resists general wear, vandalism, or theft, and offers easy, minimal, and low-cost maintenance, and is suitable for a dynamic bankside location. So if the water were to rise and to flood a little bit, that your artwork could withstand that type of weathering. And the last one is that it meets all public safety, structural, and maintenance standards and complies with the ADA Act, Salt Lake City requirements, and all other applicable laws, codes, and regulations. The next note that we have in our RFQ is kind of a note on site specificity. We generally ask that all of our artwork be site specific, but we felt that it was important to further define that specifically for this call because it has a lot of, again, historical, regional, cultural importance that is worth defining and asking that the artist respond to and keep in mind on a couple different levels. So the area around the Jordan River, as it is known today, was once home to the Goshute, Eastern Shoshone, and Dene Bekeya peoples. And we can recognize that this is stolen and colonized land and that we are all settlers on this land, and that the river has a rich cultural landscape to the indigenous peoples and continues to have spiritual, cultural, and emotional significance to these communities today. In addition to the importance of this river on an indigenous lens, it is also a regional asset and has a very rich history in terms of the landscape and Salt Lake City once being a baby ocean and the Bonneville shoreline, and that the Jordan River feeds into the Great Salt Lake, which contributes to Salt Lake City's very unique hydrology and landscape. So we recognize that the Jordan River spans across a lot of counties, from the Utah River to the Great Salt Lake. And so we have not only local visitors, but also regional visitors or any other visitors that come to Salt Lake. The Jordan River, as well as the Great Salt Lake, are points that people come and experience. But lastly, the Jordan River is located on the west side of Salt Lake, and the 4 boat ramps that we are looking at exist and span across 4 kind of neighborhoods that have their own identity. From working south to north, it is the Glendale community, Poplar Grove, Fair Park, and Rose Park. And these communities are some of the most racially diverse communities in Salt Lake City and historically marginalized communities in Salt Lake City. And we would like to mention this because community engagement exists on these different levels of recognizing that we are on stolen land, and this river does have significance to Indigenous peoples that still live here. That it is a regional asset, and that there is a very hyper-local and neighborhood level that the Jordan River runs through. And we also want to really note the significance for the neighborhood level, because one concept that I think is worth noting, and one goal that is of a mayor's priorities is, to tackle and understand gentrification. And there's a term called green gentrification, which means once the green space or river space becomes more developed, and we know that public art can often be a signifier that an area is gentrifying, that we want to keep that in mind and be conscious of it. And a way to prevent gentrification is to engage the communities that the artwork exists in. And so we are asking that there's meaningful community engagement so we can be mindful of the communities that actually directly surround this amenity. So pretty complex in terms of this very special feature that exists in Salt Lake City. Project budget. We have $144,000 for these 4 sites. And so split 4 ways, that is not a huge budget to work with for each boat ramp site. However, you could do a larger budget at some sites than others. That would be up to the finalist to decide how that money and budget got split between the 4 sites. Additionally, there will be $2,000 paid to 3 finalists, so a total of $6,000 that is not part of the $144,000. If you were to be the selected artist and be responsible for the $144,000, it would include your artist fee, your all permitting, all installation, fabrication, storage, shipping, travel, design, artwork related, electrical, everything. And we also ask that we know that public art and every project is incredibly challenging and there's always some unknowns. And so we ask that you include a 10% contingency in your budget. For the $2,000, if you were to be a selected finalist and have that honorarium, we recognize that often calls for artists will include a little bit higher of a travel stipend for those who live out of state. We know this is a regional call, but we are planning that all meetings to the Art Design Board and helping to work with and understand what community engagement would look like from afar and through a virtual lens because we are through a global pandemic. So all the finalists will be the same, and the expectation is that all meetings will happen virtually. For the selection process of for how this goes is after we, and I wonder, actually, Abby, well, we can talk about this selection criteria. So let me just juggle my papers here. The selection criteria that we ask the board to consider when looking at all applicants' materials is that the artist's professional experience represents a developed and successful body of site-specific public art projects of a similar scope and scale as demonstrated by visual documentation, an ability to meet deadlines and budget and to perform work in a timely professional manner, willingness of the artist to consult and work collaboratively with the Salt Lake City Art Design Board, community stakeholders, and all city partners, ability to understand sense of place and design in a context-sensitive manner. Artist process and work reveal something about the world, that communicating unique perspectives, inviting the viewer to question, discover, and explore new ideas, and the storytelling is compelling and exploration feels relevant and deeply considered. We also ask that artist process and work represents an artistic challenge or stretch, that there is risk involved in this project. And we ask that artist has an authentic relationship connection to the content community involved in the work. And so this would be, again, your ability to define what a meaningful community engagement process looks like to you. And that, again, the artist has created work of permanent nature that do not require excessive maintenance or repair costs. And meets all ADA standards. We know that public art can be really tricky to maintain, and so we want to make sure that we have a reasonable ability to make sure that your creation and your artwork can stand the test of time for our communities to enjoy. Abby, do you want to talk about the project schedule as well as the submission requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're already into our project schedule. That is great. The call is open and we're having our applicant post session right now. As a reminder, we will do our absolute best to host this on our website. So if you've come late or have to hop off early, you can catch up there. And also for anyone who may only be here for this piece of the info session, we welcome questions afterwards. This call will close February 19th at 5 p.m. I cannot emphasize enough the 5 p.m. deadline, the form will automatically shut down and stop accepting applications after 5 p.m. And even though all of our calls close at 5 p.m. and we try to be very straightforward with applicants to have that expectation, we always have a few folks who seem to be kind of surprised when that 5 p.m. deadline comes up that it doesn't go all the way to midnight. The reason our calls close at 5 is so that we are working all day until the deadline of the call and are available to answer any emergency questions. That said, I highly recommend that you try and get your application in at least a few days before the deadline, just so that you have that wiggle room to make sure that if any troubleshooting that's needed, we can help you with that. Once our application has closed, our board will review applications on March to select 3 finalists. Everyone will be contacted in the week or less following that meeting, letting them know whether or not they were selected as a finalist. We won't just ghost you if you weren't selected. We will go through contracting with those finalists in March and April, and we will also try to coordinate a meeting with finalists between the finalists, the public art program, and some partners from the Parks Department to talk more about the nitty-gritty of this project. You'll notice in the project schedule that we have a pretty long design development phase in this project, which means that finalists will be selected in March but won't have to present their designs until June 3rd. The reason for that is we wanted to give a little bit of extra time for finalists to meaningfully engage with the community so that that engagement could really be incorporated into designs and taken into consideration. So we've added an extra month into that design development phase, and we are hoping that that helps make that an actually reasonable component of this call for artists that can really be kind of a meaningful aspect. The board will review finalist presentations in June, and from that will likely recommend this to the mayor for final approval. The mayor is the person who can ultimately decide whether or not an artist gets the commission, and the board will also recommend an alternate to the mayor. And then we'll get cracking on entering an artist commission contract and kind of working through the implementation. From the timeline for this call for artists, and please let me know if you have any questions about any of that. As far as the submission requirements, oh sorry, that's next on my one sheet, but not on my other one. Oh yeah, okay. So as far as the submission requirements, you'll see that we're only accepting submissions through the website Submittable. We found that that is a pretty user-friendly website. And if you bump into issues, we definitely would recommend reaching out to Submittable because they provide good technical assistance. We're also happy to answer any questions about the RFQ and the details of kind of what's required for the application by emailing us. Our email is listed in the question section of the RFQ. The application is pretty simple, pretty standard. We're expecting a letter of interest where you can hopefully articulate some of your previous experience, your interest in the project, and give us a little bit of a heads up for what meaningful community engagement means to you. We know that the finalists will further flesh out their community engagement plan, but we'd love to have a bit of a sample idea of kind of what you're thinking when that comes to this project. Second requirement is a resume. If you are applying as a team, please submit a resume for each team member. Don't exceed 2 pages. We do request professional references from each applicant. And finally, we'll request 5 to 10 images of your recent work. Try to choose images that are as close in scope and scale to this project if possible. You'll see when you're applying that there's an opportunity to provide some context about the image uploading. Tell us, for example, the date that you completed the project, the title of the work, the budget of the project. All those prompts are in the application, and that additional context surrounding your images is very, very helpful for the board when reviewing your application. We don't tend to have too many questions on submission requirements, but if anything comes up, we're absolutely welcome to field questions on those items. And I think the last thing that I would touch base on in terms of our process is our artist agreements. There are 2 contracting phases in our public art process when it's run like this. So all 3 finalists will be asked to enter into a contract with the city for the design development phase. And then the artist who's ultimately commissioned will enter into a new contract with the city for the commission. We have samples of both those contracts up on our website and totally encourage artists to please check those out as soon as possible, just so you have maximum awareness of our process. Kat?
Thank you, Abby. I would just add with the artist agreements that we recognize that the insurance requirements to contract with the city can always be pretty tricky. So to pay special attention to those in the contracts. If you were to be a selected finalist, you would need to obtain workers' waiver comp and list the Salt Lake City Arts Council or Salt Lake City Corporation on your certificate. And if you were to be a selected finalist for the full commission and recommended to the mayor, your artist work agreement would include auto insurance, general liability insurance, workers' waiver, and are a little bit more in depth and will take some planning. And so as a reminder to also include your insurance costs in your itemized budget if you were to be a finalist and or the selected commission, that you're accounting for that cost in your proposal. We both have kind of touched on this, but to be crystal clear, after you submit your qualifications for the Art Design Board to review, they will do a short list of those applications and select 3 finalists. We will select those finalists in an Art Design Board meeting. It is scheduled in the beginning of March. Shortly after, we will try to notify everyone in a timely manner of those 3 finalists, and that's when that first artist design agreement phase will happen. You will enter into that first agreement and then have the time to develop your proposal. And so now we'll kind of go over what that looks like for those finalists, that process of the artist design phase of the process. You'll sign the contract, you'll provide your workers' waiver, and then you will have kind of an onboarding meeting with the Parks Department, and we might have a few community stakeholders as well with the public art program. So we want to make sure that you are up to speed with what the expectations and timeline and resources that are available for you as you develop your conceptual proposal. Abby kind of talked about the timeline. We've extended the proposal phase a little bit longer so you can have some ability to look over what that community engagement process might kind of look like. We do have some suggested ideas, and we are working on kind of a one sheet to provide with each of our projects, but I think that because it is a regional call, it could look a lot of different ways if it's reaching out to the 4 mentioned communities. Glendale, Poplar Grove, Fair Park, and Rose Park all have community councils. If you want to connect with them, if you want to connect with anchor institutions in the area, if you are local and want to walk that trail, if you want help releasing a survey to ask for stories of the neighborhood and what is important to the people who live in that neighborhood, if it is about researching the indigenous peoples and the occupied lands that we are on. There's lots of, if it's focused on the research of the history and the importance and unique hydrology of this area, that we're really open to different ways of community engagement, but we are asking that you at least outline what that would look like in your proposal if you were to be the selected artist, and or if you are able to complete some of that community engagement in your proposal. Your proposal should also have your plans and ideas communicated through scale drawings, renderings. If you would like to send in an actual model, that we could invite the Art Design Board to schedule time to come up to the Arts Council and interact with your artwork. We want to be really flexible and support you in however you would like to get your ideas across to the Art Design Board and stakeholders. The presentation will be in June. Again, that meeting, then with those 3 finalists, we will have a virtual meeting. You will all get 25 minutes to present to the Art Design Board and stakeholders. We ask 15-minute presentation and 10 for questions. And in that meeting, after the three finalists present, the art design board will have a thorough and thoughtful discussion and talk about each proposal, and they have three options. And those options are to either recommend one proposal as is to the mayor and an alternate. They could ask one, two, or three, all of the finalists to revise their proposals and make some modifications. And or the art design board could reject all proposals forthright, ask artists to come back with a different proposal altogether, and that process starts all over again. So, but the board does have to make a recommendation to the mayor, who does have final approval of the selected artist, who will receive the commission. And then again, it's been said before, but we are in a global pandemic for the foreseeable future, although it is looking brighter for vaccinations every day. So everything will be online, and whatever support we can offer you, we are happy to set up test presentations, which we've done with a lot of our artists up until this point in the last year. So here to support you and make sure that you know, the technology is accessible and everyone has a chance to be able to present on this platform successfully. And that is leading us to the last kind of section of the RFQ, which is talking about resources that are listed in our RFQ and what might be available for you as you are deciding if you're going to apply for this call or not. And Abby, do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely encourage any applicant to follow those links. Mostly they will give you more information on the boat ramps themselves, which I think is obviously a super important thing to understand as you apply for the boat ramps public art project. I do have a few images pulled up to give folks a little bit of a sense of what you can expect. So bear with me as I attempt to share these. All right, is this sharing my screen? Amazing. So this is the northern boat ramp called Riverview Boat Ramp. It was just completed. The fact that these boat ramps are being constructed now, I think, is an important note for any artists interested in this project. It means that your artwork isn't completely dependent on the construction timeline unrelated to the boat ramps timeline. These boat ramps are pretty simple and functional, as you can see, and so we look forward to seeing what can be done with them from an artwork perspective. But they're going to be a huge asset in terms of having folks access. Kind of tricky to share one screen. I finally want to share this map if it'll load. Is that showing, Kat? Great. So this is a map of some of the project sites where these boat ramps will be installed. I think it's worth noting that collectively the boat ramps will cover over 10 river miles. So they really are a massively long project area. That would just lead me to reiterate that this project kind of has the opportunity to be engaged with in this collective unified way along the river trail, but also that each ramp can sort of exist on its own 2 feet. So the southernmost ramp is the one that already exists. For those who are familiar with the Salt Lake Valley, it's near the former site of Raging Waters, and then the 3 new ramps will be throughout the valley here. Here's one, and then this one up at 18th North. All of the resources at the end of the RFQ give a lot more opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into these ramps. And of course, we welcome any questions on the project itself. Let me see if I can stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Abby. That was super helpful to see this map. Great, and now we can, are you ready for questions? Awesome. Yeah,
Yes.
if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. You can message Abby on Instagram. And if you have questions that you know, end up coming up after this, feel free to reach out to the public art program at slcgov.com, and Abby and I will get back to you. Make sure that you have everything you need to submit an application. Do you have any questions on Instagram?
Yes, someone's asking if these photos and resources will be available. Absolutely. Everything is linked in the resources section of our RFQ. These resources are coming mostly from the Salt Lake Parks Department, the Salt Lake County information on this project, and then an entity called the Jordan River Commission, which has a little bit more info on the Jordan River itself. This is not an exhaustive list. There's much to be learned about this area and this project, but I would definitely start from the resources page of the RFQ itself. That's on our website, that's linked in the submittable, and you'll be able to find things there.
Do you see any other questions on your end, Abby?
I don't.
Great. Oh, here we go. $1,444,000 will be divided among 4 sites. So we just had a question asking how the budget would be split, and it will be we know that 144 split among 4 sites kind of shakes out to be a smaller sculpture for each site, but your way, however you would like to whatever you would like to split the budget between those 4 sites. And the follow-up question is, what are the artworks attached to? So the artist will be responsible for footing and any installation requirements for those sculptures as well. So you will be able to see, and these boat ramps are under construction and will be complete this summer, but there is no existing concrete pad or rod wiring or anything like that that exists in any of these places. And so that will also be the artist's responsibility to make sure that they have something to anchor into. Another question we have, will the video recording of this meeting be posted as well? Yes, we will do our best to get this downloaded and hosted on our website, saltlakepublicart.org. Hopefully we'll just put it on the same page that the RFQ is located on, so it's all in the same place. How about on Instagram, Abby? Any other?
Yes, a couple more. What kind of art are you looking for? Are murals okay? We do not designate what is allowed and not allowed in terms of an applicant at this stage. I would say that it seems like there may not be a great surface to host murals. We tend to try and steer away from paint the pavement style artwork because attached in our funding is an effort for the art to be permanent or at least somewhat long-lived. So I think that while we don't have a specific rule that says no murals are absolutely not acceptable, and we would be completely open to exploring that idea, it doesn't strike as perhaps the most suitable way to respond to these sites given what they offer already.
And I think just to add on that, we have a question asking, can these be freestanding versus attached to the side walls? Again, I think that's totally up to the artist of how they might respond to these sites. If there is an existing wall that is Salt Lake City public property, it could be that one of these sites has a mural and 2 of the sites have a freestanding sculpture and the 3rd site has something. At some of these locations, there are bridges that are very adjacent to the site. So that could be an opportunity to work with Parks and Public Lands and to decide how public art might be attached or incorporated and used on those sites. So there are a lot of ways to respond to each of these sites, especially because each of them looks different. And so as these sites get built and as we get a finalist on board, they would work really closely with our Parks Department team and engineering department to make sure that the scope of each site is that there's a real understanding of what you could propose to and what the opportunities are at each site. So again, this is a request for qualifications. And so in your letter of interest, we don't exactly ask how you would respond to those sites at this stage. It would be much more once the 3 finalists are selected and we can work really closely with them to identify the exact scope that exists for each site.
I've got questions on here about if it would be possible to anchor into the riverbed and what the take is on climbable or interactive artwork. Both excellent questions. And I think that Kat's previous answer is probably most applicable to those 2 questions too. At this stage, I don't know if we would really be saying yes or no to any ideas, planning on working with the finalists really closely with our city partners to find out what's possible. I know that's a bit of a broken record, but just wanted to address those two questions specifically.
And I think we kind of answered this too, but again, is it on the ramp or just near the ramp, or, kind of what is that scope? And so the ramps will be already laid, as the construction will be complete as of this summer. So I think that there is a way that we could work with the parks to see if there, whatever was laid for the boat ramps, if there is strong enough structural attachments to, depending on the weight and the scope, to attach into the boat ramps or the adjacent walls. But because each site is different, it could be near the ramp, potentially on the ramp, but just so many different ways to approach each of these sites. Okay. Do we know if there are unique ground conditions or setbacks that we need to consider concerning placement of the artwork and its footings? That is a really great question, and something that I think will have to be, I don't know what those exact unique ground conditions might be, other than, like we said earlier, that the artwork and the install plan will have to consider that this is in a flooding area. And so whatever artwork that is proposed and whatever install footing requirements are needed to support your artwork also be able to withstand that this, the land surrounding the river can be quite easily flooded, what that looks like in terms of it adjusting through the years. And so if it needs to be set a little bit farther away, so the Gadsby boat ramp, if you are able to look on Google Maps or Google World View, you'll see that the parks signage that exists there is probably a good distance from the river bank. And so, each site will look a little bit different. And I think that we're willing to work really closely with you to make sure that an artist budget isn't just totally spent on making sure that this artwork can exist near the bank of a river. So just know that we're really willing to work with you, and the artists will be able to have access and work really closely with the engineering and parks department to make sure that we are setting you all up for success.
We've had two questions on eligibility. One, if I reside in a state that's not eligible but have some connections to a state that is eligible, can I apply? Unfortunately, no. Eligibility is restricted to artists who reside in one of the eligible states. That said, I had a question if this is for Salt Lake City artists only, and no, this is a rare regional call for artists encompassing several Western states. So hopefully we have kind of a broad pool of applicants. Good questions. What else? What else?
I know. Wonderful questions, everyone. Are there any other questions that anyone might have via Instagram and or WebEx? I'm not seeing any anymore, but these have been really great questions. And I think that we'll try to do our best to, as we have this recording placed, even try to go a little bit deeper and might include these in the Q&A posts that we usually attach. So we'll try to make sure that these are clear because it's really great info.
I got, is Oregon one of the states? It is not. All of the eligible states are listed in our RFQ and are Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. I'm almost certain I captured all of those from memory. Double check the RFQ to make sure that you're eligible. Okay, if no more questions are going to filter in, we'll probably sit tight for a few minutes, allowing more things to show up. But I just do want to highlight a couple of key takeaway pieces of information. One is the deadline is February 19th at 5 p.m. Again, the form will automatically close and you will not be able to apply if you don't get your application in before that 5 p.m. deadline. So please consider applying a little bit before then. Secondly, I would just want to re-emphasize that we are happy to field questions if there are things that come up later. Contact info for the public art program via email in the RFQ, so please reach out to us there. You're absolutely welcome to. I think those are the two main things I would highlight. Kat, anything else you want to make sure we've really emphasized?
I think that's great. And I also just kind of want to do a plug for some other open opportunities that the Arts Council has right now. I have actually resigned from my position as the Public Art Program Manager, and the listing for the job is open as of today. And so if you know anyone or you are interested, you can find more information about the Public Art Program Manager position at saltlakearts.org. Additionally, and I'll just say that I've loved working with all of you, and working with the artists and working with Abby has been the absolute highlight of my job. So I just appreciate you all and wish you all great luck in all that you are doing. And the other opportunities that are open from the Arts Council right now is an Artist Career Empowerment Grant. I believe that the grants are anywhere from $500 to $2,000. Submissions will be until February 23rd, so shortly after February 19th. I know February 19th is the date for this call to close, but it will also be February 19th is the day that this calls and the Public Art Program Manager position closes. Another opportunity is there is a racial equity grant for nonprofits to cultivate greater and more consistent efforts and outputs related to racial equity, justice, inclusion, and liberation for nonprofits in the arts and culture sector. That also has a deadline of February 23rd. So those are now open. Lots of opportunities available through the Salt Lake City Arts Council. And I just saw another question here. Let me see it. Oh, thanks. Thank you, Heath. Appreciate your kind words. And next question from Shelley. Do they encourage concepts, design ideas, and the RFQ process? We know that artists, we don't want to encourage you all to do work without getting paid for. And that's why we do a request for qualifications. And so nowhere in our submission requirements do we ask or encourage for you to include concept design ideas, because we know that that is work that you are doing that you might not get paid for. And application submissions, RFQs are already enough work as it is. However, you would not be disqualified for that, but it's not something that we're looking at. Really, we're just asking, in that letter of interest, you could talk about how you might have some ideas of how you would approach it. But in your letter of interest, we are asking that you outline your interest in this project and your experience working on comparable projects of similar scope and scale. We also ask that you describe your personal community engagement process and what that has looked like for you in the past, as well as what meaningful community engagement means to you. And that's really all that we ask in the letter of interest. And so you could say, for these 4 sites, we are, have an idea of incorporating different mural, freestanding, whatever. You could allude to that, but we're definitely not asking you to, we don't encourage that. You could, we're not encouraging sketches, but you could, and they really aren't weighted heavily. So this isn't one of those things where it's like, no, we don't encourage it, but we really, we don't encourage it, but we won't be disqualified if you were to include it. Great question.
I've got a question on Instagram. Is there a place to get more detailed info on the sites, like maps and square footage? There is. One of the resource links from the Parks Department is an ArcGIS story map, and it has links to all of the sort of design documents relating to the boat ramp projects themselves. So check that out, and you can get quite far down the rabbit hole into detail about each of the boat ramp sites, with the possible exception of the southernmost site. That's a site where there's an existing boat ramp that's being improved rather than a brand new boat ramp. So that one might be detailed a little bit less extensively there, but you can still definitely get the gist for that 4th and final ramp. Sorry, I keep tilting my head. I'm trying to read the Instagram info when I do that.
I know, virtual world, Abby's tilting her head. I can't multitask and read questions and finish my thought at the same time. So thanks everyone for your patience navigating this ever-evolving virtual world. Any more questions on Instagram, Abby? I'm not seeing any more on WebEx.
I don't think we have any. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to let us know. Otherwise, you're welcome to trickle off, and we so look forward to seeing your applications. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'll just echo that and appreciate you all taking the time to join us. Happy to support you through this application process. I'll miss you, Shelly. Let's stay in touch, and appreciate, and we look forward to reviewing all of your applications. And Abby and I are here to support you in the RFQ process. So please use us. We're happy to answer any questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And maybe we'll give it a minute more and then we can end a few minutes early. Any other questions on Instagram?
Nope.
Cool. Oh, wait. All right. Well, email us with any other questions and we'll just go ahead and log off for today. So thanks everyone. Take care.
Thanks,
Take care of
everybody.
yourself.
Stay in touch.
Bye.